Hey everybody, this is Erin Weber, and my community resource audit is on musicians. This is a group that I am a part of. I've played in band for 10 years of my life now, and I played piano a little bit before that. So a lot of the issues that I'm going to talk about and the things that I notice are things that I have personally experienced or things that I have seen my peers personally experience. So first, let me tell you what I mean by musicians. I am approaching this from a fairly broad perspective. There are many, many ways that you could further narrow it down, but I am approaching it from a broad perspective because I believe that there are some connections between these different musicians, and I think it's kind of important that I explore them. So first, I'm talking about music students. These are people at a collegiate level that are majoring in some sort of music-related field. Most prominently, that includes music education and music performance, but there are also things like music theory, music therapy, pedagogy, all sorts of different music-related majors. Second, I am talking about music educators. These are mostly college professors that function as directors, conductors, and other sorts of teachers. And these also include high school and middle school teachers, as well as conductors of amateur and community ensembles. Third, I am talking about professional instrumentalists. These are people that are paid to play in city orchestras or are part of a group that plays at weddings, things like that. And we are also looking at amateur instrumentalists. These are just people that play an instrument for fun. That is the group that I am in. That is what most musicians are in, and that's sort of why it's hard to pin down a specific number of musicians, because there's a ton of amateur instrumentalists that play, they casually play trumpet in their church orchestra. So there's a lot of people in that group. I am only looking at instrumentalists. I am not looking at vocalists or choral performers. This is mostly because I am not a singer and I don't know very much about it, so I have narrowed it down so that it's instrumentalists. So now I'll be talking about some of the information needs, seeking, and other behaviors of this group of people. These apply to all of the groups, the students, the educators, the amateurs, and the professionals. Some apply in various degrees, or some may not be able to articulate these needs, so I'll kind of talk about that as I go. So the first and most basic need of being a musician is technical practice requirements. These include things like how you play a certain rhythm, how you play a certain note, how your note fits within the ensemble notes, how you make melodies, how you play soft, how you play loud, things like that. Sort of going along with this are the physical components of instruments. These involve things like which keys make which notes, where do you place your fingers, how do you place your embouchure. The embouchure is what your lips do. Third, musicians need to find recordings of literature. So when you get a piece of music for the first time and you've never heard it before, you don't know how it's supposed to sound and you don't know how your part is supposed to fit within the ensemble. So it's very helpful to be able to go find audio or video recordings of other bands that have played this specific piece of literature so you can hear it and hear how it sounds and emulate that sound. So fourth and fifth, these are more for the educators and the students side of things, but some of the amateurs need these as well. They need copies of scores. This is the what the notes look like on the page for all the instruments, so that you can see how everything fits together. And they need information on professional development. This is true for any field that can be a job. So last, I'm going to talk about one of my articles with this one, is health-related concerns. This is sort of a new information need of musicians, that a lot of musicians knew that they needed this, they just didn't know how to express it, and it's only becoming a scholarly accepted field of study in the past 20 or 30 years. So there are correct and incorrect ways to play instruments, and if you play them incorrectly, you can damage various muscles, your fingers, your lips, your cheeks, your jaw. Lots of things can get hurt if you don't do them correctly. And Trollinger, she talks about some of these injuries that students can sustain and how music educators need to be up to date on medical knowledge regarding instruments, and they need to be adequately able to express this information to their students. For information seeking, musicianship is a highly interpersonal field. A lot of it is passed down master to student, meaning that the director or the conductor, whoever is in charge, they tell the people in their ensemble how to play their instruments, what the music is about, how it fits together, about the composer, things like that. There's also a lot of interpersonal communication among peers. So if one saxophonist has a question on how you play a high C sharp, they'll turn to the person next to them, say, what is the fingering for this note? The first person answers, and then they have increased their knowledge of their instrument. So secondly, a lot of musicians are using the internet, which I think is a wonderful resource for a couple different reasons. So first, it's a great place to find scores. You can order tons of scores. There's so many score websites that you can find any kind of music you want. You can find Katy Perry, you can find Kesha, as well as classical Beethoven and Bach. You can also, there are a few free score websites that have various stipulations regarding copyright. So some of these free sites are things that are in the public domain that are so old that they no longer have copyright, or they have very limited usage for the free scores that you can get. It's also great for listening and finding. So if you have a song that you've never heard before, you just go to YouTube, you pull it up, and you can immediately listen to it and understand that song. So Kristen Dugan talks about the use of the internet in her article. It's called Finding the Right Notes, and it's a study of how music students, graduate and undergraduate, seek and use score and recording information. So she asked them a set of questions, and she gave them a set of tasks that basically was go on the internet and somehow find a Broadway score, for example, was one of them. And then she sort of evaluated how they did it, what they used, the path they took, if they gave up, if they were successful, that sort of thing. And so one of the information-seeking behaviors is within information literacy. And this is also a sort of new idea because there's been sort of a historical value on inclusiveness only within the musician community, that you only got information from whoever was in charge of directing your ensemble. But now, with recent years, there's been a big push to sort of broaden the musician community out, and this includes in libraries at the collegiate level. So Beth Christensen works in an information music-specific literacy program where she basically works with these music students and instructs them on how to find information and why it is useful to them. Some brief points about my search strategies. First, I started my search for information in an incredibly informal source. So I was in a music sorority in college, Tau Beta Sigma, and I'm still part of the GroupMe. And so I sent a GroupMe message to these people that I was in school with for 4 years, asking them, what do you do as a musician? What do you look for? What do you find? How do you find it? What are your favorite databases? What are your favorite websites? Et cetera, et cetera. And I got a ton of different responses. So that was sort of my jumping off point for my entire strategy, was just using the community that I'm already a part of. Some of the things they suggested: articles, database, JSTOR, standard issue. But someone also suggested Science Direct, which I thought was weird, but that was actually where I got the Dugan article that I just mentioned in the last slide. And so that's a lot of the studies that have attempted to quantify in some way musicianship. For my resource guide, I broke it down into 5 different sections. So first is professional organizations, and here I also included some collegiate fraternities and sororities, Phi Mu Alpha, Sigma Alpha Iota, Kappa Kappa Psi, and Tau Beta Sigma. They are all music organizations that promote sisterhood, service, musicianship at the collegiate level. So for publications, One of the big ones is the Music Educators Journal, which is published by the National Association for Music Educators, or NAFME. I've actually volunteered at one of the NAFME conferences that was in Nashville when I was an undergraduate. Scores, I've already talked about a little bit. Websites mostly included theory websites, the theory behind chord structures and scales, things like that, as well as some collegiate websites, namely Kentucky's music school website and Berkeley. They have lots of videos, instructional techniques, promotional stuff on their website. And last, I talked a lot about apps that you can get for your phone, and I think these are really important for the younger generation of musicians, the up-and-comers, that they can have these apps in their pocket whenever they need them. You know, they can access YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, other sort of apps. There are apps for tuners, there are apps for metronomes, all sorts of tools that they would need to use as a musician on the go. I didn't have time to get into the ethical considerations or my needs assessment in this presentation, but if you have any questions about those aspects of the assignment, please let me know, and I'll be glad to share my findings with you. I thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you learned something about musicians.